The desert moon was cold and silent, a place where even the wind seemed afraid to move. Daniel Cross drove his small supply rover across the uneven ground, the headlights cutting through the thick night fog. He had traveled this route many times, but tonight felt different, heavier, as if the darkness was watching him. Daniel was a widowed father, a man who once had a warm home, a loving wife, and a life filled with laughter. After his wife passed away, silence became his only companion. He worked alone, delivered supplies alone, and spent most nights staring at the stars, wishing he could feel something again. As he drove across the lonely desert, he suddenly heard something strange through his comm system. A sound that did not belong to the wind. A weak, broken voice like someone trying to cry but unable to breathe. Daniel frowned and slowed the rover, looking around the dark landscape. There it was again. A small whisper, almost lost in the cold air. A sound that should not exist in this dead place. He parked the rover and stepped out, the cold hitting him instantly. His boots sank slightly into the dusty ground as he followed the faint voice. The desert stretched endlessly, but the sound grew clearer. A soft gasping cry, the voice of someone on the edge of death. Daniel hurried forward, his heart beating faster. Then he saw something that froze him where he stood. A head. Only a head sticking out of the ground. A young alien girl buried up to her neck, her skin pale, her eyes wide with fear. Her lips trembled as she struggled to breathe. For a moment Daniel could not move. He had seen many terrible things in his life, but never this. Never a child buried alive, left to die in silence. He rushed to her side and knelt in the dirt. Hey, I'm here," he said gently, even though she might not understand human speech. Her eyes moved weakly toward him, filled with terror and pain. Her voice cracked like dry leaves. Please help me." Daniel felt a sharp wave of anger. Who would do this to a child? He touched the ground near her, feeling how cold the soil was. She must have been here for hours, maybe longer. "What is your name?" Daniel asked softly. "Arya," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "My people left me here, they said I was unfit." Daniel clenched his fist. Unfit for what? What kind of culture buried a child alive? He looked around the desert nervously. This place felt wrong. The ground around her looked disturbed, like several holes had been dug recently. Maybe she was not the only one. "Arya, I'm going to get you out, okay?" Daniel said. Her eyes widened with fear. No, they will come back, they always come back to check, if the unfit ones are dead." The wind suddenly shifted, carrying the sound of something far away. Something moving over the sand. Daniel felt a jolt of fear in his chest. He did not have time. If her people returned, he knew they would not allow him to take her. He began digging with his hands, pushing away the cold dirt. The soil was packed tightly, forcing him to work fast, almost frantically. Arya whimpered in pain every time he accidentally brushed her skin. I'm sorry, just hold on," he whispered, his hands shaking as he dug deeper. He could feel her shoulders now, and the ropes tied around her arms. They had not just buried her, they had bound her first. The cruelty made Daniel's stomach twist. Minutes felt like hours as he dug. The faint sound in the distance grew louder. Arya's eyes widened with fear. "They are coming," she whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "If they find you, they will kill you too." Daniel ignored the warning. He grabbed the ropes and cut them with his utility knife, then pulled her free with all his strength. Arya collapsed into his arms, weak and freezing. Her breathing was shallow, her skin icy cold. Daniel lifted her and ran toward the rover. As he ran, he glanced back over his shoulder. On the ridge above the burial ground, he saw shadows. Tall figures watching silently, not moving, not speaking. Just standing there, staring at him and the girl. A chill ran down his spine. They had seen him. They knew he had taken her. He placed Arya gently inside the rover and shut the door. As he climbed into the driver's seat, the shadows on the ridge seemed to multiply, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. A silent warning that this was not over. Daniel started the engine, his hands trembling. The rover shot forward into the night. But even as he escaped into the fog, he felt the weight of their eyes on him. Watching, judging, waiting. The girl beside him took a weak breath and whispered, Why did you save me?" Daniel looked at her, a soft sadness in his eyes. "Because no child deserves to die alone," he said. "And because humans don't walk away from someone who needs help." But deep inside, he knew something terrible had begun. Saving her might have started a conflict he was not ready for. Yet he could not turn back now. He had chosen his side. And he would protect her with his life. The rover sped across the cold desert. its engines shaking as Daniel pushed it harder than ever before. Arya lay in the seat beside him, weak and shivering, her breathing slow and shallow. Daniel kept glancing at her, afraid she might lose consciousness at any moment. The marks from the ropes on her arms looked deep and painful. She had been suffering long before he found her buried in the ground. "Stay with me, Arya," Daniel said softly, trying to keep his voice calm. Her eyes blinked open weakly, and she looked at him with fear mixed with confusion. You are human," she whispered as if she could not believe someone like him existed. "And you saved me, even though I am nothing to my people." Daniel shook his head firmly. "You are not nothing," he said, "and your people were wrong." But he knew there was no time for comfort right now. The desert behind them was not empty. He kept checking the rear camera, watching the fog swirl like living shadows. A sudden beeping noise cut through the silence. Daniel looked at the sensor screen. Movement detected. Large shapes moving fast. A chill went through him. "They found us already," he muttered, gripping the controls harder. Arya swallowed nervously. "They travel on dust riders, strong machines, much faster than this rover," she whispered. Daniel exhaled sharply. Of course they had better vehicles. Of course they would not give up the moment they saw him take her. He pushed the rover's throttle to maximum. The engine groaned like it might tear apart. The speed increased, but not enough. Not nearly enough. Arya suddenly tensed, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim cabin light. "I can feel them," she said slowly. "3 riders, maybe 4, they are coming from the south side, they want to block you." Daniel's eyes widened in surprise. "How do you know that?" Arya shook her head weakly. "My kind, some of us sense life, emotions, anger, they are full of anger now." Daniel felt a twist in his stomach. If she had abilities her people feared, that might explain why they called her unfit. Why they buried her. Because she was different. Because she was special. Ahead, the rocky hills began to rise, sharp and uneven like teeth in the dark. Daniel knew the only way to escape was through the narrow canyon path. But it was dangerous. One wrong turn and the rover would crash into the stone walls. Still, staying in open desert meant death. He turned the steering wheel sharply, guiding the rover toward the canyon. Behind them, faint lights appeared in the fog. Blue-white lights of alien Dust Rider engines. They were closing fast. Arya's breathing quickened. "They want me dead, they cannot let me speak to outsiders, they think a child like me brings shame." Daniel felt anger rise again, hot and sharp. "No one kills a child under my watch," he said, "not today." The rover bounced violently as they entered the canyon, the narrow walls rising on both sides like a cave without a roof. Echoes of the engine boomed around them. Daniel tightened his grip and stayed low, focused on every twist and turn. Then the Dust Riders entered the canyon too, their engines roaring. Their lights flashed on the stone walls behind them, creating long shadows that danced like monsters. Arya whimpered and covered her ears from the noise. Daniel tried to comfort her with a quick glance, but he had to keep his eyes on the path. A Dust Rider moved closer, only a few meters behind the rover now. A blast of energy shot past, missing the rover by inches. Daniel cursed under his breath. "They're trying to disable us," he said. Arya trembled. "If they stop you, they will bury me again, but this time, I won't wake up." Daniel clenched his jaw. He steered sharply left, scraping the rover against the canyon wall but dodging another energy blast. He saw a narrow side tunnel in the corner of his eye, almost invisible in the dark. He took a deep breath and turned the rover into it. The Dust Riders shot past the opening, unaware he took a hidden path. For a moment the tunnel was silent. Only Daniel's heavy breathing filled the space. Arya looked at him with wide eyes full of awe and fear. "How did you know that path was there?" Daniel shrugged slightly. "Human instinct," he said, even though he wasn't sure himself. "Maybe luck, maybe fate, maybe something else." The tunnel opened into a wider valley. In the distance, faint lights shimmered. The human outpost. Finally, a sign of safety. Arya sighed weakly, her body relaxing slightly. "You saved me twice now." Daniel shook his head. "Not safe yet," he said quietly, "but soon." He sped toward the outpost and the large metal gate came into view, guarded by 2 human soldiers with rifles. The moment they saw the rover approaching, they raised their weapons. Daniel slowed down and opened the door, holding his hands up. "Don't shoot," he called out. "I have a child who needs help." The soldiers looked inside the rover and saw Arya, pale and shaking. One of them frowned deeply. "Why are you bringing an alien girl here?" he asked sharply. Daniel's jaw tightened. Because she was buried alive by her own people, he said, and I'm not giving her back. The soldiers exchanged uneasy looks. This was the beginning of something big, something dangerous, something political. But Daniel didn't care. At that moment he only cared about the trembling girl beside him. Arya whispered, barely audible, "Please, don't send me away." Daniel looked at the soldiers with fire in his eyes. "She stays with us," he said firmly, "no matter what comes next." And he meant every word. Even if the whole galaxy came knocking, he would protect her. The human outpost was a small but strong place, built with metal walls and wide floodlights that cut through the darkness. Daniel carried Arya in his arms as the soldiers opened the gates, their faces tense and uncertain. She was trembling like a frightened child, her skin cold, her breath shallow. Daniel walked past the guards without waiting for permission, his voice low and steady. "She needs medical help now," he said. "She won't survive another hour." Inside, the medical team rushed forward, surprised to see a young alien girl in such terrible condition. Nurses carefully placed her on a medical bed, attaching scanners and warming blankets around her weak body. Arya's eyes moved slowly, watching the humans with confusion. Her people never touched the weak with kindness, never treated the sick with care. This was all new to her. Daniel stayed beside the bed, refusing to leave her alone. Dr. Harlan, an older man with tired eyes, examined her injuries. "She has bruising, cold damage, severe dehydration," he said, shaking his head. "But she's stable, for now." Arya's voice came out soft and unsure. "Why are you helping me? I'm not human." Daniel leaned close, his expression gentle. "Because you are a child," he said, "and humans protect children." Arya stared at him with disbelief. In her world, a weak child was not protected. A weak child was removed, buried, forgotten, erased. Dr. Harlan looked at Daniel seriously. "You know this will cause trouble," he said quietly. "Her people won't accept you taking her." Daniel nodded. "I'm ready for that," he said. "I won't give her back to the ones trying to kill her." Before they could say more, alarms suddenly echoed through the outpost. A sharp voice came over the comm. "Attention, all units, unidentified crafts approaching, prepare defenses." Daniel felt the air grow heavy. "They found us already," he whispered. But the crafts didn't attack. They hovered outside the perimeter, waiting, watching. A message was transmitted to the outpost. It was a cold, emotionless voice that chilled the room. "Return the unfit one to us, she must complete her termination ritual." Arya flinched, eyes wide. "They want me," she whispered, hiding her face under the blanket. Daniel clenched his fists. "They will not take you," he said firmly. The outpost commander, a strict woman named Captain Rena Vale, entered the medical room with heavy steps. She looked at Daniel with frustration. "Why did you bring her here?" she demanded. "This is going to cause a diplomatic crisis." Daniel met her gaze without fear. "She was buried alive," he said, voice calm but sharp. "You expect me to walk away?" Captain Rena sighed, rubbing her forehead. "Look, Daniel, I understand your heart, but alien territories follow different traditions." Daniel snapped back. "Traditions don't matter when they involve killing children." Arya watched them with wide, frightened eyes. She felt the emotions in the room. The anger, the fear, the tension. And something else, something warm coming from Daniel. She sensed his determination, his kindness, his refusal to let her go. Her own people never showed those emotions. They taught children that feelings were weakness, that compassion was a disease. Arya had always felt emotions deeply. That's why they hated her. That's why they buried her. She reached out and touched Daniel's sleeve. You feel so much," she whispered. "Your emotions are bright, like fire." Daniel blinked in surprise. "You can feel emotions?" he asked gently. Arya nodded slowly. "Yes. I was born with this sense. That is why they called me unfit. They fear anyone who can feel too deeply." Captain Rena stared at her with shock. "That's not a weakness," she said slowly. "That's a gift." Before they could say more, a loud explosion shook the outpost walls. The lights flickered and the alarms changed to red, warning of danger. Captain Rena shouted into her comm. "Report." A soldier replied, breathless and urgent. "The alien clan is demanding we release the girl. They say she carries a shame that must be erased. They are preparing weapons." Arya curled into herself, trembling. "If they take me back, they will finish it, they will bury me again, deeper this time." Daniel placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "You are safe here," he said. "No one is going to hurt you again." But even as he said it, he knew this was not over. The outpost was surrounded. Her people would not leave without her. And humans would not hand her over. A message came through again, this time filled with anger. You protect what must die, human, you interfere with our purity, release the unfit one or face consequences. Captain Rena looked at Daniel. We cannot give her back, she said firmly. But they might attack the outpost. Daniel took a deep breath. Then we do what humans always do, he said. We protect the innocent. Arya looked at him, eyes filling with tears she could not hold back. No one ever protected me before, she whispered. I don't know how to be safe. Daniel sat beside her, his voice soft and steady. You don't need to know, he said. You just need to stay with us and we will protect you. Captain Rena watched Daniel silently. His stubborn kindness was dangerous but also very human. And this moment, this choice, would change everything between humans and Arya's people. A faint rumble shook the ground again. The alien forces were preparing something bigger. Something violent. Something meant to show humans their place. But Daniel didn't move from Arya's side. He stayed there like a shield, ready to face whatever came next. Because he had already chosen. Arya was not unfit. She was a child who deserved to live. And he would not let her die. Night fell over the human outpost like a heavy blanket. Cold winds howled against the metal walls as the sky darkened into a deep, endless blue. Most nights on this lonely moon were silent, but tonight felt different. Tonight felt dangerous. Even the guards whispered to each other with tense voices. Inside the medical bay, Arya sat upright on the bed, hugging her knees tightly. She stared at the glowing lights on the ceiling, trying to calm her fear. Daniel sat beside her, refusing to leave. He could feel the pressure building outside like a storm preparing to burst. Arya looked toward the window nervously. I can feel them again, she whispered. Her voice shook like a child afraid of the dark. They are coming closer, they are angry, so angry. Daniel placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You're safe here, he said softly. But inside he wasn't sure. He knew her people were cruel, but he had never expected a full attack. Captain Rena entered the room with a heavy expression. Behind her, soldiers hurried through the halls, carrying weapons and armor. We have trouble, Rena said, her voice low. Scouts report alien warriors preparing for a ground assault. Arya froze. Her eyes widened, glowing faintly with fear. They want to kill me before you can protect me forever, she whispered. Daniel clenched his jaw. They'll have to go through every human here to reach you, he replied. Minutes later, the first explosion shook the outpost. The walls trembled, the lights flickered, and dust rained from the ceiling. Arya let out a soft cry, covering her ears from the booming noise. Daniel stood up quickly, grabbing a protective vest from the wall. The alarms blared in harsh red pulses, filling the hall with frantic energy. Captain Rena barked orders into her comm. All teams to defensive positions, shields to maximum, watch the eastern wall. Soldiers rushed past Daniel, ready to fight. Most looked nervous, but no one backed down. Daniel turned to Arya. He knelt in front of her and held her hands gently. I need you to stay behind me no matter what, he said. Arya nodded weakly, tears in her eyes. I don't want anyone to die because of me. Another explosion shook the ground, this one closer. The sound of alien war cries echoed through the night like sharp blades. Humans could hear them climbing over rocks, getting into position. Their shadows moved across the security lights, tall and powerful. The attack began. Energy blasts hit the outpost walls, shaking them violently. Guards returned fire, lighting up the darkness with flashes of blue and red. Daniel stayed near Arya, shielding her with his body as he guided her through the halls toward a safer room. Suddenly, the power flickered and went out for a moment. Only emergency lights remained, creating long, eerie shadows. Arya gasped and pressed herself against Daniel's side. They are inside the perimeter, she whispered. I can feel their minds, their hate is sharp, they are searching for me. Daniel tightened his grip on his rifle. They won't find you, he said. But as he spoke, footsteps echoed from around the corner. Alien warriors were moving through the outpost, their armor clicking softly. Captain Rena appeared with 2 soldiers. Daniel, we need to move her to the secure bunker, she said. He nodded and lifted Arya into his arms. Her body was shaking uncontrollably. Her senses overwhelmed by so many violent emotions around her. As they hurried down the hall, an alien warrior suddenly burst through a side door. His eyes locked directly on Arya. He raised his weapon, aiming to kill. Arya screamed. Daniel reacted instantly, tackling the warrior and knocking the weapon aside. The two struggled on the floor as the soldier tried to stab Daniel with a sharp blade. Arya watched in terror. She felt the warrior's rage attacking her like a wave. She closed her eyes tightly, trying to push it away. But something inside her responded differently. Something she had never understood before. Her hand glowed softly. She felt the warrior's emotion, then pushed it back at him. The alien froze, suddenly overwhelmed by fear instead of anger. He staggered backward, confused and powerless. A human soldier took the chance to stun him, dropping him to the floor. Daniel stared at Arya in shock. "How did you do that?" he asked. Arya shook her head quickly. "I don't know, it just happened. I wanted him to stop." There was no time to think. More explosions thundered outside. Alien warriors roared and human soldiers shouted commands. The base was becoming a battlefield. But Arya's strange new ability had given them a chance. They reached the bunker, a heavy metal room designed to survive assaults. Inside, soldiers guarded every corner. Captain Rena locked the doors behind them. "We can't hold them off forever," she said quietly. "But we will protect her as long as we can." Arya looked around, trembling. "I never wanted this," she whispered. Daniel knelt beside her again. "You didn't cause this," he said. "They did." Another explosion shook the bunker doors. Humans raised their weapons, preparing for a final push. Arya closed her eyes again, sensing dozens of minds outside. "So much hate," she whispered. "So much fear too, they fear what I can become." Daniel placed his hand on her shoulder. "You are not unfit," he said softly. "You are stronger than you think." And as the alien forces prepared a final attack, Arya slowly realized something. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She wasn't just a buried child. She was someone worth fighting for. And now, for the first time in her life, she had someone fighting beside her. The bunker shook again as another explosion echoed through the outpost. Dust fell from the ceiling and lights flickered, bathing the room in pale red. Human soldiers held their positions, ready to defend the bunker with their last breath. Daniel stood in front of Arya like a shield, refusing to move even one step away from her. Captain Rena listened to the comms with a tense expression. "Front gates failing," a soldier reported. "Enemy forces pushing through the west wall," another voice added. The situation was getting worse by the minute. Arya pressed her hands over her ears, overwhelmed by the emotions she could feel outside. Fear, anger, hatred, desperation. Every emotion hit her like a wave. "They are nearly here," she whispered. "They think killing me will erase their shame. They think I am a danger." Daniel knelt beside her and rested a hand on her shoulder. "You are not a danger," he said. "You are a child who deserves to live." Arya looked at him with trembling eyes. "You are the only one who ever said that," she replied softly. Another explosion hit the door, denting the metal inward. The soldiers lifted their weapons, preparing for the final stand. Daniel moved in front of the bunker door, blocking Arya with his body. "I won't let them touch you," he said, his voice full of quiet fire. Arya could feel his determination like a warm light in the darkness. It filled her chest, pushing out the fear a little. Her own power responded to his emotion, glowing gently inside her heart. Then something unexpected happened. The explosions suddenly stopped. The alien war cries faded. The battlefield fell silent. Everyone in the bunker froze, confused. Captain Rena checked the monitors with wide eyes. "Ships are incoming," she said. "But they're not alien fighters." A large shadow moved across the sky. A human patrol ship, massive and armed, descended from orbit. Its spotlights cut through the smoke and dust, illuminating the battlefield. Through the comm system, a powerful voice spoke. "This is Commander Holt of the Terran Defense Fleet. Stand down immediately." Human reinforcements had arrived. The alien attackers hesitated, shocked by the sudden arrival of a human warship. Some stepped back, unsure. The Terran ship fired a warning blast into the air, scattering alien warriors. Within minutes, human soldiers poured out of drop shuttles, surrounding the attackers. The alien clan was outnumbered and outmatched. They lowered their weapons, beaten and trembling. Inside the bunker, the tension slowly faded as Captain Rena opened the door. Human reinforcements rushed inside, checking for injuries. Arya watched with wide eyes as the noise of battle faded into quiet. "It's over," she whispered weakly. Daniel helped her stand. "You're safe now," he said. She leaned into him slightly, exhausted but alive. The next day, the Galactic Council held an emergency meeting. Human representatives argued fiercely on Arya's behalf. They showed evidence of the burial ritual, the injuries, and the attack on the outpost. Many species were horrified. Even those unfamiliar with human emotions understood cruelty when they saw it. Arya's people tried to defend their actions, claiming it was tradition. But the council responded firmly. A tradition of killing children will not be recognized. In a historic ruling, the council declared Arya a protected individual. She was granted full sanctuary under human guardianship. Her clan was forced to retreat, their practices condemned by the galaxy. When Daniel returned to the outpost's medical bay, Arya stood nervously near the window. She looked healthier now, wrapped in warm clothes and bandages. The moment she saw him, her eyes softened. "Daniel," she whispered. "Is it true? I don't have to go back." He smiled gently. "It's true," he said. "You're safe with us now." Arya looked down at her hands, trembling slightly. "I don't understand why you care," she said quietly. "I don't belong anywhere, not to my people, not to yours." Daniel shook his head. "You belong with those who protect you," he said. "And if you want, you can stay with me." Arya froze, her breath catching in her throat. "You want me to live with you?" Daniel nodded slowly. "You need a home," he said, his voice gentle. "And I could use some company." Tears filled Arya's eyes. Warm tears, the kind she had never allowed herself to feel before. She stepped forward and hugged him, her small arms wrapping around him with surprising strength. Daniel held her carefully, like something precious. For the first time in her life she felt wanted. She felt safe. She felt seen. Weeks passed. Arya slowly adjusted to her new life on the human station. She learned their language, their customs, even their jokes. Humans treated her like family, not like a mistake. Daniel would often sit with her, telling stories of Earth, of oceans, forests, sunrises, and laughter. Arya would listen with shining eyes, imagining a world where children were loved. One evening, as she stood at the observation window, she felt something unusual. A soft emotion rising inside her, warm and peaceful. She turned to Daniel and asked, "What do you call the feeling when your heart finally stops hurting?" Daniel smiled at her gently. "That," he said, "is called home." Arya nodded slowly. For the first time in her life she understood. She was no longer unfit. No longer alone. No longer buried in the cold ground. She was alive, protected, and loved. And in the quiet glow of the human outpost, a new family had been born.